What's up, nerds? Back with another video. I got inspired by the Erika, Kirk, Candace, Owens talks, and it inspired me to talk about two things: suicidal empathy and the weaponization of empathy, or just empathy in general, right? And how that is used by mainly the left, the liberal side of things, and the dangers that come with that. And this was obviously inspired by politics video. Candace Owens and Erika Kirk are two political figures. Erika Kirk is now the president or CEO of Turning Point USA. Obviously, Charlie Kirk, her husband, was someone that many people say is like one of the reasons why Trump was elected. If you could break it down into arbitrary, percentages, like maybe Charlie Kirk was 1/5 of the pie, whereas other pieces of the pie could have been podcasters, could have been, internet figures like Charlie, could have been, various sports people, like Trump loves going to UFC and sports events and whatnot, right? And so it's political adjacent, right? But we're going to mainly try to talk about the empathetic aspect of things, because it's just something that I think you should really be aware of whenever the conversation gets to certain points where the other person is, essentially saying like, oh, well, you're a bad person if you, think this way, or you're a bad person if you have these thoughts. And you don't want to go to the extremes. And an extreme, for example, would be Alex Jones and the Connecticut school shooting, right? And he was sued, and the way he phrased things, essentially his argument was, well, how do we know it wasn't a false flag operation? And the argument was like, well, that's not exactly what you said. And, given the circumstances of things, it would maybe other things could be false flags. But in this specific scenario, that's not exactly where you should go with this, right? And so with this Charlie Kirk, Erika Kirk, Candace Owens, situation, there is a lot of things that just don't add up, and we have significantly more information about that tragedy than we do the Connecticut, the school shooting, right? Or the elementary school shooting, right? And it's just, stuff that I don't like to think about certain things. I don't like to think that, friends and family could have been involved in this assassination. I don't like to think that our government could be involved in this assassination. I do not want those things to be true. However, there are just, questions that are unanswered. And if you don't put yourself in a spot where you are open to talking about things, we'll just never find answers. And it's almost, to me, it almost feels like certain things are done on purpose so that you can hide behind these things. You can, if you do certain things certain ways, or play to these empathetic emotions, or empathetic buttons, or talking points or whatever, then you have this convenient sunscreen or, screen where nobody can question anything, because the second you question anything, oh, what are you, some deranged person? Oh, what are you, some sick fuck? Oh, what are you? How could you think this way? How could you bop, 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 bop? And it's like, well, I mean, how else are we supposed to get answers? How else are we supposed to get to the bottom of things? And it's very similar to something that really drives me nuts, and it's anti-Semitism and Jewish religion, how they have, the history of them. And, it's really rough, because I know in my heart of hearts, I am not an anti-Semite. I know this. You can fucking think whatever you want about me, right? I know at the end of because I grew up around Jews. I grew up enjoying Jewish entertainment. I grew up going to Jewish schools, right? Like I canvassed for Jewish politicians, you know, like, so if there's anyone who knows, aside from maybe like, you know, people with direct Jewish families, right? If anyone who knows if they're anti-Semitic or not, you know, I would know if I'm anti-fucking Semitic. And yet I can't ask questions or I can't go, you know, think certain things without being called an anti-fucking Semite. And it's like, oh, God, you know, like how do they have it so perfectly set up that no one can question anything? Because, oh, God, you must be a bigot, you know, anti-Semite, whatever. And that's how this situation feels to me. You can't question anything about Charlie Kirk. You can't ask any questions because, you know, how dare you question, you know, someone's wife? How dare you question, you know, the people involved? How dare you have any of these questions? Like, don't you have any empathy? Don't you have any feelings? Don't you care about like any of this stuff? It's like, obviously I fucking do, right? But God forbid, what happens if there were some kind of questionable things going on? How else would you possibly be able to get the answer if you did not go to these certain points? Because again, God forbid, you know, people were involved that were close to Charlie that ended up, you know, turning their backs on him or played parts in, you know, this tragedy. And it's just something that I had to make a video about because I got, you know, I was watching a podcast, PBD podcast, right? And listening to Adam Sosnick talk about this. And he's like, how dare you, anyone? How could anybody ever think this way? How dare you? What's the matter with you? How could you do this? And it's like, bro. So we're just going to turn off, like he pretends to be this logical person. He pretends like, oh, I know what I'm talking about now. I'm reformed. I'm, you know, I can like think about these things these way. But then at the same time is like, I would never think like that. I could never do that, any of that. So in my head, you're leaving yourself with this massive fucking blind spot to where if anyone wanted to do anything or get away with anything, they would have to just do that. You know, flip a person on close to them, flip to someone in this empathetic zone and or under this empathetic label, and then no one would ever be able to question anything because God forbid you think about if the wife was involved in something, right? And it's, I don't fucking want it to be the case. I'm like praying it's not the case, but you need to be able to ask those questions. You need to be able to get in that space. You don't live in that space. You don't take it as gospel. It's just something that you need to be able to evaluate all of the facts and everything in the situation. And again, the goal, again, don't live in it. Don't take it too far. We've seen what happens with Alex Jones, you know, and it's just, you know, it's funny having him as an example because he was right about a lot of shit and he was wrong about things as well, right? But when you look at the memes, he was right about a majority of the fucking memes. The frogs are turning the water, or the water's turning the frogs gay. They got pig boys in China. You know, like all of those things turned out to be true. And, you know, other stuff that I won't talk about for fear of the YouTube algorithm. But that's just today's video. Just quickly, you know, don't drink the Kool-Aid, but question what is in the Kool-Aid. And, you know, think to yourself, okay, I'm not going to drink the Kool-Aid. And maybe that possibly is because it is poisoned, you know? And terrible metaphor, but that's it. We're ending the video on that. I just had to get that out. Smoke grass, eat ass, be excellent to each other. I will see you in the next video. Deuces.